Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this next episode of the Greatest Profession podcast. This is a very special episode to me because it is with a fella named Al Atkinson. Al Atkinson is, he's a small animal general practitioner, semi-retired now. He sold his clinic. He's old, like ancient. Like, I think that he's made of dust. He may not be, I'm not sure. But he sold his practice in San Diego, maybe about 5 years ago now. And then at this point, he's just mostly traveling. Half the time he lives somewhere in central Colorado. And then I was going to say the city, but then I don't want you stalking him. And then, half the time he lives back in San Diego. Big city, no way for you to find him. For all of you out there listening, he is in the witness protection program. So just don't share his name. I would still like you to share the podcast if possible, but just, bleep his name out. He's witnessed some things. People are after him. No, Al is... Al's a particularly special person because he may be the person, if you were going to kind of link back and say, like, who inspired you to become a veterinarian, he's probably the closest to that person for me. He is a veterinarian who I actually did improv with back in San Diego. So I've known him for, like 20 years. Oh no. I didn't realize I was that old until just now. Mamma mia. Ooh, I'm getting hot. Okay. I think let's say it was like 18 years. So like a whole person. Like our friendship could vote and buy cigarettes, which it wants to do both of those things. He and I did improv together back when I was in San Diego. I had been doing it for a couple of years, so I must have been 20 at the time when we first met. And then he joined on, this goofy, wide-eyed, big smile, balding fella who happened to be a veterinarian. And so that's what he did during the week. And then, on Wednesdays, he would drive down after his last appointment, and then we'd do, our rehearsal stuff together. And then later on, we would do shows and things like that. So to be in this position at this point, to talk to him about from a place where it's like, oh yeah, I also have opinions about the career. To talk to him now about this and bring him on the podcast is actually really special to me. So I will warn you in advance, there is quite a bit of us just joking around. I apologize. I don't know what it is. I haven't done improv for a long time, but at the end of the day, if you get a couple improvisers in a room, they're going to make fools of themselves. So yeah, bear with it. I try, you try to cut it out, but then the rest of it doesn't make any sense. So here you go. That is what it is. Al moved to California like way back in the day. I'm going to go within the 80s. Before California had people. He's been... Al Atkinson moved to California back in the gold rush. He moved back, quite a while ago. He worked he doesn't tell this story, but he's like, when he was moving, he's like, wow, I'm just going to move to California. And so he chose like a city kind of at random. And he's like, Riverside. That's basically that's, coastal beaches and blah, 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 blah. Riverside, for those of you who don't know about California, is not a coastal town. It is about, 2.5 hours north of San Diego, like up to 15. So like it's north of San Diego in such the same way as Las Vegas is north of San Diego. Same freeway, you pass by Riverside on your way to Vegas. So that's where he was. Eventually he went down to Oceanside and then made his way down to kind of like the La Jolla area and started his practice, which is, I met him sometime after that. The cool thing about Al is that he keeps up with his medicine. He's always been somebody who seems to be really fascinated by the new things that are coming out and what we're doing. So he's somebody, when I think of these like quote unquote old style or these aging practitioners, it's like, oh, that's old medicine. It's like, well, here's a guy who, he's been around a while and he's had successful businesses. He can very easily, if he wanted to, sort of check out and run on autopilot and, charm people and let that be the reason that people come to him. But he didn't. He has all of those things, but then he also has this thing where he's like, yeah, I mean, but we should be doing good medicine too. I mean, he's talking to me about medications that are like just coming out now. He's semi-retired. He doesn't need to keep up in that way, but he does because he loves it. So I think that that's something that I really look up to in him. In an industry where I feel like it's easy sometimes to check out of the medicine, it is, it's like we get so mired in everything else. It's easy to forget why we were doing it in the first place or what we got interested in the first place. And he seems to be keyed in on that in a way that I really respect and admire of him. And also, I met him doing improv. That means that he had this whole other thing that he was doing outside of his career. He's like dabbled in some acting, and then he was in a some film when I didn't get accepted for a role in this film. We both auditioned. He did. I'm not jealous, nor do I hold a grudge. You know what? I'm not even going to release this episode. Al's stupid. No. He was doing all this stuff outside of veterinary medicine, which was his career, which he was actually, really involved with, and running his own business and that. And he had a family. One of those things when I look at a career, you think about all these trappings, these ways that you can get stuck doing that, and you lose so much of yourself. And so when I think of Al, I think of somebody who was somehow able to avoid that. And I think a lot of that was just diving into things that made him curious or made him, that interested him. We go back and forth about a lot of things. He definitely, approached me. He's like, God, I love the podcast. I really do think that this is something that it is the greatest profession. I'm like, well, I'd love to have you on. I've been trying to pitch to him since 2017. I've been trying to pitch to him. Maybe we do a radio show like Car Talk, where just people call in and, ask us questions. And then we just go on for a while. And then at some point we answer. I'll mostly be relying on him for the answers. And then I'll provide the color. No, he's funnier than me too. I'll provide the hair. I'll provide the hair. He provides the information and the comedy. Deal? Deal, Al Atkinson? Anyway, thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. And here you go. Al Atkinson on the Greatest Profession Podcast. I can do that. Thanks. Yeah, it's like a little Clint Eastwood. You gotta squint the eyes. And you get the mouth that doesn't really move that much,
We're doing ventriloquism at the same time.
Tick him up. Who said that? I did. This is a robbery. Who's robbing who? I'm robbing you. I'm standing right in front of you. Don't you see?
I can hear you. I can know you're here, but your lips aren't moving.
And you're still doing it when you're in San Diego? You do improv?
Yeah, I do. Yes, short answer is yes, and also when I'm in, and then when I'm up in Colorado, I'm with a group up there too. So I get to do.
I just want to know what the long answer is. Like the long answer is no.
No, that's
it's
correct.
just me on a street corner talking to myself, asking for change.
Well, it's me and Clint Eastwood.
Right?
You got some money?
Okay, so you still do improv when you're in San Diego, and you said you have a place in Colorado. You go to?
Yeah.
Wait, where?
That's called right in Carbondale. They do Carbondale to Aspen.
Oh.
That whole they do that whole valley. And they're called Consensual Improv. Really cool group too. Really sharp people.
Nice.
So it's real cool. The problem I've got is that I'm in both places less than 50% of the time.
Right.
You might be going, how's that possible? But I go other places too.
Yeah, you're traveling.
Yeah. So when I show up, they kind of go, "Oh, hey Al, it's good you can make it. I haven't seen you in about 6 weeks."
Mm-hmm.
But they are both here and in Colorado. They're really cool about letting me come in and practice and have some fun. And then if there's a show and they've got an opening, then they let me play. So I like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, the nice thing about it, it's I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but it's a family, and
Yeah.
um, so you get to know these people, and go out afterwards with them to do stuff, and so you get to
Yeah.
know them pretty darn well, especially when you see people
Right.
like you were doing. It was five. If you did 5 shows in a week, but then you also had to practice,
Right.
um, and then maybe getting together with some of the other folks another time. So it was a big um, they were it was a family. It was an improv family. It still is,
Yeah.
and you get to just know people and what they're doing, um, and get to see them for years. I mean, like you got to meet you, and then as you progressed, and then now you're a veterinarian through all that, and then I've seen lots of people from improv that they were just like teenagers when they first
Yeah.
started. Now they're married, they got 2 kids,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like wow.
Yeah.
So it's a cool.
And that's also kind of cool
It's
about,
I love it.
yeah. And with improv, it's not so, especially in San Diego. But I found this in Chicago too. It's like, it's not necessarily all consuming. It's not like you have to make your life this thing. And so to your point, you have all these other things that you're doing, engaging in other careers or, yeah, building a
Mhm.
family or whatever it is. And then yet you still come back together and then do this very weird, unique thing together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to like, if someone was an actor and then they were doing a play, it's like rehearsals, 6 nights a week for 6 or 8 weeks, and then you got to commit to, shows every weekend for
Right.
1 or 2 months, and it's
Right.
like that
Yeah.
is a commitment.
Yeah.
Our commitment is, hey, can you come for a couple hours once a week and then do a show? Yeah, I think I can squeeze that. I can squeeze that in.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can
Exactly.
squeeze that in.
Yeah. And to your point, as you get closer and closer to everyone, it's just hanging out with your friends. You just
Mhm.
happen to be on stage,
Bingo. It
some of that
is.
time.
It
Yeah.
is, and it's just goofing around with people. It's a cool. Almost, I said almost said a sport. It's a cool sport,
It's a cool sport, man.
but
Yes. Full
because
contact
it is.
improv. Yeah.
But it is. It's a fun thing, and I'm so glad I got into that. I got by
Yeah.
accident got into improv, so it was very fun. It's fun.
Yeah. How did you get into, like, when did you start doing it?
I got into started acting in the '90s, late '90s, and so what I was doing was just acting, and poorly, like I do still. So I was just doing acting stuff and just really kind of learning acting, and I had done a few little small roles in this and that, maybe a commercial or two, and a couple small movies, and then this thing came up I think it was called the Breakdowns. It was from NCT. It was for auditioning for improv, and I went, "What's that?" And it would show up at, I don't know, Sunday at noon, and you'd have to prepare. You didn't have to memorize any lines or anything. And it was like, yeah, that sounds good. They just got people together, and you would do different things. Or you guys are in a car. You guys are in a car, and you're gonna rotate around, and you're just hitchhiking or whatever it was. And then it was like, oh, okay. So it was just kind of just playing around, and then they did a few different things. Give you a bar stool and say, okay, you got 30 seconds, do as much as you can with this bar stool
Right.
as your prop, and different kind of scene stuff. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just had no idea what I was doing. Um, and but I left and I was going, hey, thanks, thanks. That was interesting. Have a nice day. And then I get a phone call back about a week later or 5 days and say, hey, you want to be on the troupe? And I went, sure,
Wow.
that'd be great. So I
Yeah.
showed up, and they went through the training thing and
Sure.
trying to learn improv from that point. So
Huh.
it was just a serendipitous, just happened to be there,
Yeah.
happened to see that, and that was it.
Yeah. And then, from there, it's just kind of fun to show up and, do the
Yeah.
practices. And
Yeah,
one day you get on the shows and, all that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. It was an incredible opportunity. It was a incredible opportunity, and
Yeah.
I met some incredibly talented people, which some of them are still friends. I'm counting you in that group,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it's just fun. So 20
Yeah.
years later, I'm still doing it.
That's awesome. That's really, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cool. I am very grateful for Well, I'm very grateful for this friendship. Even though I have to like hunt you down sometimes because you're off. Like I'm retired
Mhm.
now. I'm not responding to anyone. I'm in Peru. But when we
Yeah, no, I'm not retired. I'm not retired, but I am, as somebody said, about as retired as you can get without being retired.
Yeah, you're retired. I mean, like when you, it's like being a teacher, and you sort of say, "All right, goodbye," and you collect your pension or whatever, and then you work at a Walmart. It's still retired.
Are you saying I should work at a Walmart?
No, I just assume that you do. I guess
I
I don't
do.
know.
I do.
Everything about you says Walmart greeter.
It does.
Okay, that's what I
I
thought.
do. I work at sporting goods most of the time, and then sometimes they have me making the hoagie sandwiches, and we sell those for $1.
Oh, $1. Wow.
Yeah, it's Walmart.
So okay, but so you started doing acting. If you were in the '90s, when did you? Because you were already well into your veterinary career at this point.
Pretty much. Yeah, as you said, ancient. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you still have all your vet school notes that you wrote on papyrus? Is that
I have
still?
most of them.
You
I have
still?
most of them. Yes,
Okay.
I do, and some of the audios that are on that little wax recording.
Sure.
And I still have my original bottle of ether and chloroform. That I learned with.
Right.
So that's good.
I was thinking, I'm like, gosh, I guess when you were in school, you didn't have like that much to learn. Like they just figured out that dogs and cats were different animals, right?
Right. For a long time, they just thought it was the same thing, but just like that dog can really jump high, and and that was it.
All right.
That's all we knew.
When did you graduate from vet school again?
82. In 82, we were using. We really didn't have any monitors except a student would listen in to what the animal
Wow.
was doing. Maybe we'd
Yeah.
have we'd have an EKG hooked up, just the leads, clip,
Yeah.
and then look at that. And halothane was the new thing, so to speak.
No, really?
Yeah, halothane,
Wow.
because we had just changed to from metafane to halothane. Did I say that right? Yeah, we
Wow.
started with the metafane, which was in one of these old glass containers. You just poured it in the surgery room, and you tried to pour it up. And how much do you put in? You put in you started pouring it until you started getting dizzy, and then that was where you stopped and you screwed it back in the machine. And then we were just gone from that to halothane. The vet hospital that I worked at a vet hospital as a tech before I got into vet school. And this was not uncommon, by the way, but we would have this is incredible. We had a can of ether. The ether comes in a can, and you would have a can of ether in the freezer with holes punched in it. It's not, of course, once you didn't have to put it in the freezer until you punched a hole in it. So you punch a hole in it to start using it, and then
Right.
you put it in the freezer. And,
Right.
Occasionally for birds, we knock them out with ether, and then you use that, and then you put the cap on, put it back in the freezer. And I'm thinking, it's just amazing that we just didn't all blow up and wind up with a crater in the ground. But you turn on, open the door, the freezer, refrigerator light goes on, and something ever just
Yeah.
sparked.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
I just I feel like I'm having a conversation with Turner Classic Movies. I
Yeah, it was a different time, kid. It was a different time, kid. We grab my handkerchief and a little ether there. See, like you're right behind him. Hey, you Doberman, look over that way. And he'd look at it, shift his eyes, and I put it right in front of his nose. He'd be down in seconds. Within 5 minutes, the testicles were off. I had some stitches in there, and he's waking up, going, "Hey, what dame did that to me? Someone slipped something in my drink." But he was a Doberman, so he'd be going, yeah, Shotzi. Well, Shotzi, what happens there? 999 on my testicles. Schnick, schnack, schnook. Give me a beer and let me go.
It's just like, I mean, I of course, I'm at this stage where I went to school within the last 5 years, right? I graduated about 5.5 years ago, and then everything that they teach there is relevant. It's like still medicine that like people are doing, or at least it's sort of like, hey, this is the thing that we should be doing moving forward. And it's like when I looked at all of those graphs about halothane and those things, like those are, I just assumed that it was like in the ancient times.
Well, it probably was.
I have no reference for that being a reality. That's great. Wow. That's
You
amazing.
poured it in this brown glass thing. You unscrewed it, poured it in this brown glass thing until you started feeling woozy because it was like, fill up the room, and then you screw it back on real quick and then get some fresh air.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that was a bonus. I call that a bonus. You don't have to pay me, pal. Yeah, dock me an hour.
I mean, it brings up the question though, like you have this ability, so I didn't know anything about vet med, obviously when we met, right? When we were, we were trading veterinary medicine for improv lessons in the park.
That's true.
Back then I had no frame of reference, but sort of since I have graduated and started practicing, one of the things that truly does impress me about you is that you've stayed very current on everything. Like you've made a point of staying very current on all of it. It's just amazing to me that you can like that was the starting point. So like, what was that like? I mean, how do you continue to transform and make sure that you're doing, the current stuff? And what's it like to have huge shifts, like, from things like halothane to, what we're using now?
Well, here's the thing, you young whippersnapper, 5-year-old graduate. What you've got after 5 years, things are still pretty current. But when you get to be about 12, 13 years, then the stuff you started learning, and they, it was like, it was doctrine. It was, no pun intended, dogma. That was the way to do it. And this is it. Right. And we know how this works. And this is the best way to handle. And then you wind up, and after 12 years, they go, remember what we told you about, forget it. Yeah. Just forget it. And you go, what do you mean forget it? Oh, yeah. Well, I thought this was the drug to use. Oh, never. You want to never use that drug. That'll kill them. Right. And you go, well, we've been using it for a long time. You told me that was oh, yeah, but that was yesterday. And right. And so all those, I think, what is it? The breadth of knowledge we have doubles. Used to be 7 years or 3 years. It's nuts. It's accelerating. So, right. If you don't try to keep up, then you wind up that old guy that works by himself in a little hospital, and he's got a stable of clients that kind of stay with him because he's been lucky when it's what he's doing, and right, and but I mean, some people probably choose to not try to keep up, but I had a lot of peer pressure too. I worked in a group that the idea was to try to get you just couldn't be the dumb guy around about 3 or 4 other people. So, I was the dumb guy around 3 other people, but I didn't want to stay that way. Right. So it's, trying to learn your stuff. And then the other thing is, when I opened my first hospital up in Oceanside, California, that actually there was a thing called camaraderie at that time. And the local vets would get together once a month to have lunch and just talk about stuff. And so we got to, share, experiences, information from seminars or things that just didn't work or whatever So it's ways to, you just kind of have to keep up. If you don't keep up, you're falling way behind. I mean, it's just, it's staggering. But
it's still something that I don't know. I practice in a bunch of different hospitals, right? I see a lot of things come through the door, and then I get the medical records and all of that. And like, it is amazing. It's always astonishing to me how many practitioners do practice these like very old, or what feels like old style medicine, from my perspective. And I can sort of feel myself right now, I'm at that crux where it's like, I just keep going to these things, these these conferences, and you go to all these lectures, and by and large, most of it is just like, this is all stuff that I already know.
Review.
And I can feel myself even like, a year ago, I was like, you feel yourself starting to check out a little bit because you're like, man, am I ever going to learn anything new? So, my question is like, how do you stay with it? Like at some point you kind of have to make the decision, I'm going to stay with it, versus like, you know what, like I get it. I'm going to focus on my business. I'm going to focus on, the patients that I have in front of me. Like, how do you not succumb to that?
Well, to me, it was a passion, and it was a goal. I'm kind of goal driven. It's a passion, and I don't want to call it a game, but it's like I wanted to learn all kinds of stuff, and I saw a couple of veterinarians who were kind of practicing pretty old school things, and when I just don't want to fall into that while I'm practicing, and they're fun. I mean, seminars again. Maybe I'm just kind of like, that got that weird mentality, but seminars are fun, and going to them and taking notes
Yeah.
and finding out, topics like stem cells and, therapeutic lasers and ultrasound. And it's like that when I was in vet school, this is a true story. Vet school, my senior year, we got an ultrasound machine. And
Yeah.
nobody knew how to use it. That's the funny thing. It just showed up in there, and then nobody knew how to use it. Honest. I mean, I'm not making it.
Yeah.
It's like this thing just appeared like in 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like, oh look, it's like a monolith and a club. Ugh.
Yeah.
So club probe good. So that's where started. But it was like, that's the kind of stuff that we didn't even have that. And when I started my first practice, we were doing radiographs, film, and I was using dip tanks.
Yeah.
So, it's like all these things that were out there and available, they're just exciting. And if you want to kind of excel and try to be on the cutting edge of what's kind of going on, you have to, otherwise you fall so far behind. It's not even funny.
I will say that, in the defense of what appears to be my own ignorance at this point, I will say that what I've realized this past conference or set of conferences that I went to is that there's always something. Like you start to see, and maybe this is the unfolding of what'll happen next, but you go to all these talks, and they're 90% of it or whatever ends up being review, and then you go to one, and it's like, this is completely new information,
right?
And then you go to another one, and it's like, yeah, maybe it's not completely new, but then there's like this little piece that we add on now that's a little bit different. And maybe that's the transformation or the journey.
I think so, because, let's put it this way. If a whole lot of this stuff, you've only been out 3, 4, 5 years, and you go to these conferences and all this stuff is new to you, that means you probably slept through a lot of vet school. Seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously. At the last conference, there were 4 or 5 that I went to that I have to say, I don't want to, the great talk, great lecturers and everything, but it was like boring. I know this.
Right.
What you're telling me, I know. I got it. I don't, why am I here at this lecture? I got it.
Right.
I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but then I'd go to some others. For instance, this is one that changes so fast, is on oncology. The thing about that, it's not like I'm going to go back and get my, start mixing up chemotherapies and start doing that into the hood and injecting it. But what it does is it tells you, hey, your dog's got a mast cell tumor and it looks kind of bad. I know that there's some new stuff out there we can do, and I know some tests we can do here to try to pinpoint some of the specifics of your specific mast cell, and then we can get you over to the oncologist with that information, and they can do wonders.
Right.
So it's that kind of stuff, because that changes quickly.
Yeah. I always got, just when I was in vet school, I felt like that there was a lot of, from people who had, technician training and everything beforehand, there was a lot of, guy, we'll never do this in practice. Like, why is this important? And I'm just going to ignore all this information. And that stuff always bothered me because, in my opinion, we should just learn everything. I mean, this is our job, right? And also it's like, we've decided that this is going to be the kind of the rest of our life in one form or another. And then you're also paying a lot of money and time. It's just like, learn the information. It's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. Way cool.
And then the other thing is, knowing what's available to you is like, yeah, I mean, to your point, you may not be the one doing it, but to know that it is an option is nice, because now we can move forward with that as me as a doctor and a client. It's like, hey, here's a bunch of information. I can't help you. Like, I can't do an MRI myself, but that's really going to help you, determine whether or not this is disc disease or a tumor, that type of thing.
Right.
So without knowing what your options are, then you're not really doing a service to your patient.
Oh, exactly. You're not. We had from the time I graduated, literally, from the time I graduated and worked at this multi doctor practice, and from then through ever, we had a radiologist that would come by once a month, and review radiographs with us. It was like an hour. I think it
And
took
that's
an
something
hour.
that hospital, like your first job out of
Yeah.
school, like they
Well, my
had
second
that.
job out of school. Yeah. The first one was large animal, and that wasn't a good fit. But I was only there for a few months. But
Okay.
after that, I went to California, and then I was in a set. Yeah, it just wasn't a good fit. I wasn't right for them, and they weren't right for me. So I'm not placing the blame on anything. I'll take it. I'll take all the blame. But this practice, it was like a radiologist would come once a week, excuse me, once a month, and go over films. And his name was Bill Zontine. He just the most incredible guy. And you would, and I only been out of school just 2 or 3, 4 years, and reading radiographs is a skill you got to hone and work on for years.
Yeah.
So here I am, just wet behind the ears. Been out, maybe 2, 3 years at the most, and there's this guy that comes through and he's reviewing radiographs and showing things and subtleties that I would just look at it. Well, if it ain't a big broken bone, I don't see nothing. Unless
Right.
he swallowed like if he swallowed a cup of ball bearings in there in the stomach, I might find him. But I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so you would go to these and it'd be like, oh yeah, and he would show you, you look at an elbow or hips or different things and go, now this is what we're looking at, and this is that line that you look at. It's an indication that arthritis is starting to develop there. You
Mm.
got a little problem, or on this elbow you got to rotate it just a little bit more, and then maybe you can see that fragmented ancanal process, or but you got to rotate a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, okay. These things I've been calling normal, 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 they're not.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it's like, so that carried over. And I actually, when I started my own practice and in Oceanside, and then when I went down to Pacific Beach, I had the same thing. I had a radiologist that would come in once a month to review all these films, and not only just to make sure we didn't miss anything, but then also enhance our skills in reading them. But again, it's you got to put the time in and the commitment and being willing to do that because you want to
Yeah.
and you feel it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You've mentioned that to me before, where you have these radiologists come in and offer a service, but then also provide information,
Hmm.
or provide you with an increased skill.
Oh
And I
yeah,
just find that a lot of these practices, when I go into them, it just seems like it's like damage control mode. Like the way that the practice runs is just, all right, we got to see all the clinics when they come in, and then that's it. And then we're not going to talk about it anymore. We're not going to like actually sit down and have like a meeting. And if we do, it's going to be outside of business hours, and have you show up on
yeah.
a Saturday or something like that. Um, so I just think that that's such a. I mean, I guess I probably know the answer to this, but do you feel like it added significant value to your practice such that it was worth the investment?
Absolutely, and that without a doubt. And yes, and most of the time, I think all the time, we would never charge a client. They radiographs to be reviewed, and a lot of places charge an extra 20, 30, $50 for whatever it might be for some specialist review. We never did that. We just
Right.
that was just part of what we did, and I just called it CE, and we would go over that. And then when we went with ultrasound, then we went 2 hours and we would have them looking radiographs, and then we'd have like ultrasound training to kind of go over these things. So,
Mm.
but what it is, it's a value added. You feel good about it. You're providing a bit better service, and your skill is better. Just you feel when you do something, whatever your job is, whether you're a veterinarian, a plumber, a mechanic, whatever it may be, a gardener, you just want to. What baffles me is people that maybe just want to show up, do their thing. Uh, it's all phoned in, so to speak, and then just go home and get a paycheck. And it's like, do you care about what you're doing? I mean, you may not be doing it the absolute best possible, but are you even trying? This guy also had an internal medicine, not only a radiologist once a month, but he had an internal medicine specialist that would come once a month, I think, and then an ophthalmologist that would come once a month.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, I really got in. It was ingrained in me the value of continuing education, so much so that I was getting paid a salary, and we would just shut down the hospitals for whatever time it was, a couple hours, so we could go and meet at a central hospital. They owned 3 of them. We'd meet at a central hospital and go over, and all the vets would get together and get all this stuff. And so that was ingrained in me early on. It was like, you just don't sit there and just hope that what you got's going to last for a while.
Yeah.
Like getting a full tank of gas and going, I don't ever have to get gas again. I'm just going to keep driving. The next thing you know, it's like, no, low fuel. You're going to be stopped in a little bit and you're done.
That's an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah, it's like buying a car off the lot and being like, good, I did it. I bought the thing. Of course, it's going to get me everywhere that I need to go. It's got a full tank. It's got the wheels. It's got everything. But no, I mean, like some maintenance is required.
Yeah.
You gotta go. You gotta get an oil change.
All
You're
the
gonna need
time.
to change some tires. You're gonna need to fill up on gas.
Those are important. Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, you're in a heap of hurt.
Right.
Again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn and say I've never made mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes and did things wrong, but it's like I'm trying to learn from that and then try to keep up so I can minimize my mistakes.
Yeah.
I've done some consulting as an expert witness, and one of the things that they kind of lambasted before was, or stuff is like, oh, have you ever made a mistake? And I go, yeah, I've made a mistake. Have I ever been wrong? They asked me that on a trial. There's like 12 jury people sitting over there, and I'm talking about stuff, and it's like, well, have you ever been wrong or made a mistake? I said, yeah, I've been wrong. I've been wrong. You've been wrong. These 12 people have been wrong, and it's going to happen again. And it happens. Yeah. That happens.
Yeah.
And so, get out of my face. I don't add that because then I wouldn't be called back as a
get out of my face.
But it's that's just what we do. But the idea is to try to minimize your mistakes, improve what you're doing, and so that your success rate goes up. Never gonna eliminate all your mistakes.
Yeah.
Again, whether you're a plumber, electrician, a veterinarian, or a rocket scientist. Rockets blow up, things happen, things go wrong, and what you want to do is try to learn from mistakes and then try to be ahead of the curve so you can minimize the number you make. To me, that's kind of a commitment, whatever profession you're in. If you're if you're in SEAL teams, if you're a veterinarian, if you're whatever, you want to practice, stay on sharp, and try to minimize your mistakes and increase your success rate. That's the goal. And what is that? To me, that also gives me satisfaction. You just got to stay on top of stuff, and it's fun. That's the nice thing. This isn't a chore. Going to a seminar to me isn't a chore. It's a fun thing, and I kind of go. I'm going to go and learn some new stuff. Anyway, I know that sounded geeky, but that's the way it is.
Do you feel like you were always were you like a curious, investigative kid too?
No, I was a loser. Still am, but it's my grades and my interest and dedication to the academics was very bad. It was poor, and in through high school, I get every year since like 10th grade, it just got better and better and better. But then I got into college, and it was still poor. I thought maybe partying was why I was there for school, but but then after that, for getting that, it's like, okay, I get it. You get out of it what you put into it. And so I finally, got through college, and by that senior year, it's like, oh, now I know I have to study, And then eventually, I didn't get right into vet school because my grades weren't good enough. I worked for a couple of years, worked for a veterinarian, and did some graduate work, and then I was able to get in.
But as a kid, when you're walking around and I don't know, staring at a tree, I don't know, whatever kids do.
You were one once, right? Whatever kids do.
I think I was born with an armchair and I was born in an armchair with a pipe and a good book.
Yeah, I was born old,
just sitting by a fire.
Yeah. I don't know that I was that. I don't know that I was that inquisitive, to tell you the truth. I don't know that I really was. I just like to do a lot of outdoor things and goof around, but as far as exploration and how does this work? I did take a lot of things apart to try to figure out how they worked. I mean, that was a nightmare to my parents because they would wake up on a Saturday morning and this was back when phones were actually had a rotary dial,
right.
and there were things where you could open them up. And they'd wake up on a Saturday morning, and I'd be there, on the table, and I would completely disassemble the phone.
Right.
I'd have screws on the table,
Yeah.
and there was bells inside of it, and there was wires.
Yeah.
And it was like, what have you done? I went, I'm just checking out the phone. No, it does this. This is where that ringer does.
Right.
And it was like, can you put it back together? Yeah, I think so. Then it was the classic. I put it back together, and I go, there's a couple bolts and screws here, but I don't know if they're important. So try to make a phone call, and the lights would start flashing.
That's exactly every time from henceforth. Yeah, the doorbell would ring every time the phone. Like someone would call in. It does remind me. I mean, truly, I did the same thing. And when I was a kid, I would absolutely took apart that phone because we had the one with like you like turn it to the 9, it would tick 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 back.
Oh, you had that?
Yeah, I mean,
no,
yeah, because we bought it at like a Goodwill. Oh, right. It wasn't until like it wasn't until like middle school or high school that I think we had like a cordless phone, which probably honestly was best for both of us. Because neither my mom nor I are great about finding things. So like a cordless phone, that's it. You'll never find it again.
Yeah. And that was before they built that feature in so you could push a button and it would ring or something. So, well, where did I put it?
Exactly, yeah. When the phone was gone, that's it. I guess we can't make calls history now as a family. Right.
I remember that year you didn't make any phone calls.
Right, and that's the one. That's what it was.
You didn't make any calls for like 3 years, right? Yeah.
Right. Couldn't find the phone. But then one day we stumbled upon it. It was between the cushions and the couch.
Always.
My mom tells me a story of when I was a kid. We went to a grocery store and she's checking out and I like tug on her sleeve and she looks over and I have just a handful of bolts and nuts. She looks over and like the metal sign is just completely disassembled.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but boys, I don't ever hear girls doing that. But that's a boy thing because we don't have any sense. It's like I'll just take well, what do you think? What do you think? You think you can put it back together? Well, I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't think that far.
I haven't thought that far.
But I could take it apart.
I'm just going to take it apart. Yeah. But I can take it apart in a jiffy. Exactly. Can you put it back together? I have no idea. No. None. Absolutely no idea.
Yeah. So is that how you thought about like the large animal just being outside? Was that the pull, or why did you think about that first?
I wanted to be I was just kind of basically a city boy, but I thought that I could do large animal stuff as well as small. So I thought, it's probably some James Harriet, spillover, but it's like, sure. I can do large animal, small animal. That's the practice. I want to mix practice. Don't you want to do small? No, I want to do mixed practice. Well, the people that were in my class who did cattle and horses were like born in the back 40, and then they were raised by like a Holstein and or a Brahma, and so that's what they, so they knew all this stuff, and I didn't know anything about it, but it looked cool. It was kind of fun. And when I worked as a tech, the guy was did mixed practice. And so I got some exposure to it. It's just as a tech, holding them and rounding them up and, trying to, restrain them and things. But so I thought, I know all I need to know there. Well, it was it was a fiasco. That's why it was not a good fit. I got out there and went, man, I do not know cattle. I do not. And these farmers know I don't know cattle. And horses, it's like, right. They didn't want me touching their horses. In my head, it looked like a great thing. But in practice, it was a terrible choice. And so small animal was worked out. So it's dogs, cats, and then exotics, birds, rats, rabbits, and all the reptile things that come through. So it was, it's I've been able to. Hello.
Technical difficulties.
Please excuse the interruption. Our service is having technical difficulties. Please stay tuned. Your regular scheduled program shall resume now.
There you are. I lost you for a minute. Did I put you to sleep? Did you fall asleep? Did I put you to sleep?
I lost you for a second. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. It's probably because you took apart your computer and tried to put it back together. Do you have a little cup of screws and bolts and a chip or two that's just sitting over there. I don't know where these chips go.
I swear they said that this was a 6 processor, but I got 2 of them in my hand. So,
Bing. That just happened.
no, one of the things I was just curious, like, I was thinking about where we are right now, sort of as a profession and as a field. And just one of the things that sort of dawned on me is that all of the things that seem so important and immediate and maybe terrifying to us may, in the long view, be maybe not that important or that much of like a dramatic big deal. What struggles do you feel we have or we're currently facing, or what are the kind of the next things that we're going to have to be worrying about? Or is there nothing really that new, and it's just everything that we're worried about is basically the same things that we've always been worried about when you look back on?
Not to step on a lot of toes or anything, but I think corporate medicine is probably the biggest concern I have, and that's probably the biggest. Well, there's a few, but that might be the biggest concern.
Sit down. I got some grievances.
Yeah, the other.
Let Grandpa speak.
But when I had that's right. Thanks. Because I gotta go to bed in about 30 minutes. Right. Oh Lordy, it's 6:15. Where did the time go? Where was I? Oh, so the thing about when I first heard about corporate medicine, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's just, let me call it an observation, because I don't think it's insurmountable by any means. Yeah, but I think it's an issue. But I think it's a resolvable issue. It was like corporate coming in, they buy up a bunch of hospitals. So what you immediately could get, if you could buy up 10 independent hospitals, in theory, what you could have is if they work together, number one, you could potentially lower costs because if you're buying in bulk, it's the economy of scale for drugs, for anesthetic things, for all the materials that you get. You could potentially then, if you have 10 hospitals, you could have instead of every hospital has a mediocre ultrasound machine, you could have a mediocre for everybody, so you can try to do some basics. But one hospital is has a more of a state of the art kind of a hospital machine. You could have, if you have 10 that are working in concert, you could have one that was kind of like the mothership, so to speak, that had some more specialists, and you could directly route them to these kind of things. And so it says, well, that that sounds kind of like that could work. You could maybe lower costs, make it more efficient. You could do training. If you've got 10 hospitals, you can do your own training. Boy, that all sounds kind of good. In practice, it doesn't work that way from what I've seen firsthand. And then from what I hear from people who sold corporately, they seem to buy hospitals, maybe say they're not going to change things, and they wind up changing them. And this is just a broad statement. I know this doesn't apply to all corporate hospitals, and I'll have the name of my attorney at the end of this, so you guys can send all questions to them. But it's that's just kind of what I've seen so far. They kind of take something that works and doing well, and then instead of making it work more efficiently and maybe more economically, it seems to drive off employees and veterinarians and get a mentality of, we know how to do it, you don't know how to do it, and here's the book. I know one hospital that they do that. They have a book, and if somebody comes in with kennel cough, this is what you do.
Right.
And that carries some degree of weight, because I actually did that for new grads for a while. I went up, here's a book of like 20 of the top diseases you're going to find. And when they come through the door, if you don't know what to do and you can't figure it out, and I'm not here, review to this. And these are kind of some things that I do and work for me.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a backup, but not a primary thing to follow. And I think that corporate nature could turn around and make it worthwhile. But for right now, what I hear is they're taking over and really making a lot of changes that are driving people away.
Yeah, I would say that with my own experience, I would agree. I think but I do think that it comes sort of in a transition period. So I think it is most most obvious within the first couple of years after an acquisition, and then sort of after that they do like a rebuilding period, is what I've seen, just in the ones that I've noticed. And then after that rebuilding period, that's where I still don't think that they work on the way that you're saying, but I think that the culture has the potential to get better sort of after that. And then the efficiency within the hospital. But to your point, I still don't feel like that they do a good job of like working together and sharing resources. And maybe they might trade a tech, or like they probably do buy in bulk so that it's more cost efficient. But at the end of the day, I still feel like that they're almost competitors.
I think it's a great idea on paper and a great concept, and I think it could work. But much like government, I hate to bring up government, but local government works well. The federal government seems to be messed up because it's just got these extra layers. But if you've got a small community and everyone has their can communicate and get things going, you got stuff that happens. But then when you start putting these extra layers of bureaucracy in there, things start to fall apart. And I think
Sure.
that's kind of my analogy with some of these corporate things. When you have a small hospital run by one person, it can be a little dictatorial, and I'll put myself in that category, unfortunately. But it's run, and you say something and it gets instituted that day. You find a problem, you fix it that day. Whereas corporately, it's like you put it in a pneumatic tube and it shoots off to wherever, and you hope you get an answer back. So,
Yeah.
but it's a great idea, I think, and a great concept, and it can work. And maybe what you said is what happens, because I just hear a lot of veterinarians and tech staff that leave hospitals once they're bought corporately, but I really haven't done the follow-up. It's like, hey, what have you checked with those kind of places after 5 years? And I go, no, I really don't. So it might be you're driving away people that don't want to subscribe to this new concept, but then they hire
Right.
people on that do, and maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that I see is you asked I think concerns me is, bro, this is really going to sound like old man grandpa, but some of
I'm excited.
some of the attitude of some of the new veterinarians. Okay, my attorney will be available at the end of this broadcast.
I hope you have enough of a retainer down.
I do. Is some of them are kind of it's like, yeah, I've spent this time and I'm a veterinarian, I've put all this effort in, but I only want to work 3-4 days a week tops, and after like 8 hours or 7 hours, that's about it. I'm leaving. I'm walking out the door.
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, especially when you first get out of school, it's like, it's you need to put in a lot more time and be ready to work, and not kind of come in and go, how much vacation do I get the first time? And I mean, you want to know all these things, but it's like, those aren't your primary drivers. The primary drivers when you get out should be, I want to practice it. I can work hard. I might be working late, but I'm going to learn so much stuff. It's not even funny. I mean, it's just, I'm going to learn so much. But a lot of the stuff, and this is from veterinarians I know that are trying to hire people, and that's where I get some of this. And they just don't want to work as much. And I can, it's our professions never has been like, you talk about MDs when they got out and they had to be interns, and they'd be up for, 4 days in a row or something, having to,
Right.
stay up and work, no sleep for 4 days. No veterinarians never had to do that kind of thing. But it's like, hey, you may have to work 5 or even 5.5 days a week for a while. And your days off may not be consecutive, but you're going to learn a lot of stuff. Now, if you're doing that and you're in a hospital that is using, metafane and has ether in the freezer, then, well, maybe I shouldn't be here. But I think if you're at a place where you can learn and you can achieve it, you just got to put that effort in up front, and it pays dividends. But I think there's some sort of a mentality on some of it where people don't want to. That's a generalized statement, but a lot of them just don't want to put that effort in. And it's just that's my old man, get off my lawn approach. You kids get out of here.
Right.
Right now, with your 5 years out, what one thing is your gold, your rose, as it were, and one thing is a thorn to you?
Oh.
Ooh, I turned the tables on you.
Yeah,
It's the beer talking.
yeah,
The
it's
beer is taking
the
over.
non-alcoholic beers. Are
Uh-huh.
you sure it's not a can of ether?
It could be. No, I keep that in the freezer. I haven't pulled it out.
Oh, okay. Perfect. I think that the rose to me would be that you can do anything. I think that we are on, and I guess I probably said this many times before, but it's like I think that we're on this interesting precipice of major change. I think that there is this kind of wave of corporate medicine kind of buying up, and then there's this kind of resistance to that, and from the resistance is coming a lot of ideas
Mhm.
about how we kind of move into this next phase. And I think that
Mhm.
that's really cool. I'm really excited about what ideas people come up with next. And I look forward to seeing, I look to the really engaged, really inspired veterinarians who are kind of willing to put themselves out there and do that thing. And we're
Yeah.
seeing some bits of it. And I'm lucky enough that I've kind of carved out my own little niche in the industry for what I'm doing. And I think that that is really cool. And I love to be a part of a profession that you can do that. But at the end of the day, like we as veterinarians have we can make a decision at any time. We don't have to work for these companies if we don't believe in them.
Right.
If our values are
Right.
not aligned, we can do
Right.
whatever we want to. And so then the pressure ends up being, it's like maybe it is the best option. Maybe that is what people want in the direction of the industry. But at the end of the day, like if we veterinarians truly don't want to do it that way, then we do
Mhm.
something else, and then that'll put the pressure on the corporate medicine to change
Yeah,
accordingly.
I
I think that
agree.
there's big benefits to corporate medicine, and I
Mhm.
think that there's some kind of holes in it as well that we have to kind of spackle over or help kind of fix a little bit. Um, but I do think that as long as we remain engaged and vigilant and take action for the beliefs that we have, then we're going to be able to make a change. And I think that that's probably not true, or that's true for veterinary medicine in kind of a major way that may not be applicable in other professions.
I hope you're right, because I do think that is we've got to. Corporate medicine is here to. I'm going to say it's here to stay. I mean, because it's really kind of leaps and bounds and
I
buying up
think so.
places. Yeah, and well, I think so. And then, well, it's um, it's got to really flourish and take over, or completely fall and collapse. We'll see. Like you said, all right, Thorn time. Tell me.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have a great like thorn. The thing that I can maybe think of is sort of attached to the first bit, and that is this idea that I feel like many of us are, I don't know, maybe taken over by this idea that like the profession just needs to, or is going to continue as it once did or as it always has. Um, it's like
Hmm.
there seems to be a resistance to change as well. That I think, I don't know. I'm not sure that it really like bugs me or whatever. I think that's just kind of how change goes. Like until we reach a critical mass, like we're gonna have resistance to it. But I think that that's the
Hmm.
case with everything. So like,
Sure.
raising prices or I talk about this a lot, which is just like the efficiency with which a hospital runs. I feel like we are very tied into a specific model of how medicine can be done. And I'll tie this back to something that you said earlier that, that, like I'm sure like millennials everywhere were like screaming about, which is, the idea that like, grappling with this work life balance and what that looks like moving forward.
Hmm.
Because truly, the other side of the like, I see what you're saying for sure, and we'll talk about that more. But it's like, the other side of you should come in and be willing to kind of work extra, especially when you're starting out and learn all that kind of stuff, is that the incentives are different now, especially if you are working for somebody else, and especially if that someone else is a corporate that you're not really going to be able to buy into, or if you're not going to be able to like buy that business, it's not yours anymore. So it's like, what incentive really do you have other than
Right.
you being taken into this, this being your profession? So that too. I think that the amount that we're willing to put into our work has decreased as well. And it's like, how do we grapple with that change?
Yeah. Well, I can appreciate that also. I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying, and I do think that sometimes it has been. And you see veterinarians that they go to work, they don't come home till 9 o'clock at night, and it's like, what? That's not good. And that was me when I
Right.
first opened my practice for a while, thinking, well, I just got to stay there till I get it all done. But
Yeah.
then some of my family life was sacrificed. I didn't get to spend as much time with the kids and things like that. And I know that's where a lot of these people are coming from. But
Yeah.
I think there's somewhere in the balance in the middle. And by no means am I saying work 5.5 days and get paid for 5 or 4.
Right.
I'm just saying, it's a lot of these people that I hear about. It's like, hey, they're getting paid a percentage of what they're doing. So if they work more, they make more, but they don't want to work more.
Right.
It's like, I just want to work 4 days a week. But so if you work 5, you're going to make more money because we're giving you X percent. What you generate. So if you work harder, you'll make more. No, I don't want to. And I think that carries some weight to some degree, but it just depends on because, like I said, the one thing that I do like is that there's a bit more of an emphasis on your whole being.
Right.
And it's not just work is why you're alive. It's like I got to work so I can make enough and then enjoy life and enjoy my family and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think that there is something somewhere in the middle on that. And because I agree. I think that like when I was in school thinking about what would happen next, the idea of doing an internship, for example, was crazy to me because I'm like, I'm not, I paid all this
Yeah.
money, I spent all this time, and I like studied hard so I can learn the information. Why am I going to also then do this like crazy thing where I'm working 80 hours a week and, all of that?
Yeah.
But like what I ended up doing, I mean, truly for the past is from 2018 to like maybe early 2022, no, September 2021, so like 3.5 years, I would say. I worked so much. I mean, it was the same as like what you're talking about. I mean, but I was doing like 20 to 25 shifts a month, always on the road, doing all these overnights
But
everywhere, building.
This is voluntarily, though. This is what you wanted to do.
This is me.
Yeah.
This is me building
Yeah.
my business, basically.
Yeah, right,
And building my network, not saying no and all of that. And so I do, but I do know that like I reached a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
I'm losing out on the rest of my life.
Right.
And so it's about sort of striking the balance a little bit. But I did do a lot of work at the beginning and I learned a ton as well.
Yes.
So
Key.
I don't know.
I
I sit
think
somewhere in the
that's-
middle on it.
Yeah. The hospital I was working at, we worked a lot of hours, but we got paid fairly, and we got a lot of time off too.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's like continuing education and the camaraderie. So it made it worthwhile. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going off to the Bahamas for a month. You work the hospital. You've been here
Right.
a week and you can handle it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Which does happen. I hear about that all the time where they hire people and they're just like, see ya. I haven't had a vacation in 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
now it's your turn.
Right. And I'm thinking that veterinarian who hired them, they're idiots. Why would you hire a new grad, train them, so to speak, for a month and go, I'm gone for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. You're in charge. It's like,
Yeah.
talk about getting set up for failure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard a few of those stories and I thought, that veterinarian's just nuts. They're nuts.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, but there's a lot of crazy things that happen out there and stuff. So you put it, to me, and I tell people this all the time. So I love your title, but it's, it truly is. It's the best profession. It's anybody that's a veterinarian says I'm bored or I don't know what. I'm going, what are you doing? You're bored. I mean, you could do anything. You could do anything. You could do anything for being just a boarded radiologist and reviewing veterinary films from the, in your underwear in your living room and sitting all the way to you could be a boarded surgeon and working on surgeries all day long, or you could be in general practice working on dogs and cats and cows and horses if you want. I mean, what do you want? I mean, it's all out here. This is a buffet. You're at the buffet. Don't tell me there's not something there you don't like. Um,
Yeah.
but some people don't like people. Some people don't like people, and then I think that's not the profession to be in unless you want to be a surgeon. I know a lot of surgeons that go, I don't like to talk to people. They don't like to talk to people. They don't want to talk to people. They just want to be in the surgery room and do their thing.
Right.
And that's cool. There's nothing wrong. That's cool. You do it,
Yeah.
and I'll be happy to talk to them. And
Yeah.
that's a big thing. And it's trying to, I spend at least half of my time in an exam room talking to clients and finding about them. And I spend more time doing that. I probably spend more time doing that than I do with the pet. And
Right.
that's probably because nowadays I can kind of do a physical and assessment and run these things through my head pretty quickly. And then I have more time to talk to the client.
Yeah, I do think clinical practice, to your point, it's like a lot of, I mean, it is mostly people, like interfacing with people, the interpersonal stuff.
Mhm.
The medicine that you're practicing is viewed through the lens of, how you're perceived by the client, that bedside manner and all of that.
Yes, that's exactly
And,
right.
that goes hand in hand. Your ability to, ask about them and be sort of intuitive to, truly you would understand this sort of as a fellow improviser. But like one thing that I've noticed is that when you're doing improv, right, you're on stage, you're looking at the person, you are very keyed into the small subtleties of what it is that they're trying to convey to you so that
Mhm.
you can best add to that. So when I'm talking to a client, I'm very well aware of whether or not they actually understand the words that are coming out of my mouth or if I have to re-explain.
Yeah.
And then I want, feedback as well and have that be a part of a conversation and really try to like listen in as to what truly their concern is. It's not the ear infection, it's that they can't sleep,
Yeah.
it's like,
Right.
that they're being kept up at night.
Right.
So I do think it's the people bit. And to your point, absolutely, there's so many other things that can be done if you have I suppose you just have to sort of take that leap, to stop what you're doing now if it's not something that's appealing to you and start doing something else. Move laterally or move up or, whatever that means to you.
Yeah. I, um, again, there's. I'm not going to just go through list all the rewarding things of this job, but I will. One thing I will say is, um, I have met the most interesting people in practice. The most interesting people in practice, and it's because of taking the time to talk to them, ask about themselves, and then find out about them. There's one client in particular, it was years ago, but she would come in like on a weekly basis with her dog, and it was like always a new thing. It was like, oh, he's scratching his ear. I think he has an ear infection. I'd look in his ear, and his ears were perfectly normal. Perfectly normal. I said, well, if he's scratching at it a lot, maybe he's got a little allergy thing. We can try this and see if I kind of relieve some of the irritation in his ear. You let me know. And then it was like, and what I don't know, I don't really remember her name, but it would be like, okay, well, Mrs. Johnson, how's everything else going? And then for the next 20 minutes, she would kind of tell me about all these things that have been kind of going on in her life for like 20. So I was basically, it was about a 5-minute veterinary appointment that wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
And then a 20, 30 minutes of her, being able to talk to me about her personal problems. And I just listened.
Yeah.
She come in every week. It was something, oh, he's kind of limping. And he's not limping in the room, Mrs. Johnson, but let's check this out. Oh, yeah, it feels good. Can't feel any pain anywhere.
Yeah.
If it seems to be happen again, you let me know. Or, this is before they had cell phones, so it wouldn't be like video it.
Right.
He's like, okay, anything else going on? Yeah, well, And then she'd be telling me stuff, and it made her feel good. It made me feel good that I could kind of help her. And here's one of the most amazing things, and this doesn't just apply to veterinary. This applies to anybody in life, anybody. I don't care what you're doing, or even if you're just at the grocery store, it doesn't matter. But I had a client that came in once, and he's German. And he had schnauzers. And whenever he would come in, he did not know how to smile. And he was just, it was like like a lemon in his mouth.
Yeah.
And it was like talking to him, and then he'd be rough to the clients. Rough to the receptionist and the techs, and he wouldn't smile with me, and it just was like, kind of like the I know you don't know what you're doing, but I'm just watching you, and I don't even know why I'm here. Kind of a look, and you're going,
Right.
oh God, what a jerk. And then one day after I'd been in, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and I went, okay, so I checked the dog over and whatnot, and then I just started talking to him about stuff. You got, I see your name. It looks German. Are you from Germany? Yeah. And so we talked about that. When did you come? And you got other family here, such and such. And how about the rest of your family? And then it was a little bit of a silence for a moment. And then I said something about, and your wife. And then it was like, she died 3 months ago. Oh, she did. I'm so sorry. How long are you married? I've been married. We were married 65 years or 60, whatever it was, some long period of time. And so then it was like, oh my God, your wife just died a few months ago. You're coming in with your pet. I'm kind of looking at you like gruff, like, what's wrong with you, buddy?
Right.
Why don't you put a smile on your face?
Right. Yeah.
And then he told me that, and I was like, and I think I went over and I gave him, I may have given him a hug or whatever it might be, and then it was like, I know this is tough and on you, and I can't imagine what this is like, but I know it's got to be tough, and I'm really so sorry. Whatever we can do, and I'm really sorry. And then almost instantly, his face softened, and from that moment on, he never really smiled a whole lot. It was not in his nature, but he was the nicest guy, and he would come in and he was pleasant to the clients. He was pleasant to me. So the point of that story is, we have all these people that we experience and we encounter during the day, just in life, whatever it may be. And we have the blessing of having them come into a room with us for some period of time. And it's not that my goal is to be, I'm a psychiatrist and I'm going to try to figure out their problems. But it's lots of these folks don't have someone to talk to. They don't know how to talk to about it. They don't even know what to say. And then if you just kind of get them to start talking, they can kind of open up about some things and feel better. And then, just get some empathy with them. And so it's just, that was a real eye-opening thing with me. It was like, that I went and felt like I'm calling him a jerk, and then I feel like a jerk.
Right.
I find out he's got so much going on. I got nothing wrong in my life. He just lost his wife of 60 years 3 months earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I was so it's like, hey, everybody that comes in here has a sour face. I don't, maybe they're just jerks. There are some people that are just innately jerks, but there's so many of these folks that have some other problems going on in their life, and they're just trying to make it through. And I think it's just kind of showing some compassion toward not only their pets, but them. Again, that guy was a big turnaround to me of attitudes. And it was like, if somebody looks sour, I don't label them right away as a jerk. I'm kind of going, I wonder if something bad happened in their life, and that's why they're acting this way. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and if I can maybe find out and do something about it. So anyway, that was one of the things that, we talk about, CEs and being up on what's the latest drug and all this stuff. Can you fix a fracture that's in 50 pieces and put it all back together and have them walking in 6 weeks? Well, these are all important. I mean, that's our job. But you know what? It's the people that are equally important. That's another aspect of why I say veterinary medicine is so much fun to me. But there's some people, I granted, that they don't want to talk to people. It scares them, and they want to be, all alone. They want to do just surgery in a room and never talk to somebody, or just read radiographs and make reports, or be a pathologist. And we need all those people, and thank God. Mm-hmm. But, to me, you're leaving out at least half of the benefit of the profession. To me.
Yeah.
Because of my personality.
Right. And I think I agree with a lot of that. But I found that for me personally, especially in, how I'm approaching this career, that's absolutely the driving force. It is, the medicine ends up being not the same necessarily, but, it's a similar refrain on repeat. All of those things, like you said, the assessment kind of runs on in the background, and you kind of get there pretty quickly. The identifying the problem list, all that stuff happens relatively quickly. The part that is variable and that changes, that there is as many permutations as there are human beings, is that personal interaction.
Mhm.
And that's what I actually find is kind of fun about it
Yeah.
is, talking to the clients. And then for me, add the layer of, talking to the staff at the different hospitals and
Right.
kind of how do I engage in this collective? Yeah, that's the fun piece.
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh, I'm wholeheartedly. And you whippersnapper only been out 5 years, but in my time so far, I have, because I've talked to people and get them to start talking, I have discovered and got to talk to a B-17 bomber pilot.
Hmm.
And I had one of the Flying Wallendas. I don't know if that means anything to you. One of the Flying Wallendas came in, tightroper.
Was that one of the people that, you get like the biplanes or whatever, and there was like a tightrope and they did like aerial tightroping or something?
Well, I think that's a different group, but
Oh.
the Flying Wallendas
Whatever.
were
I just
they were
remember
more ground-based.
Remember those old black and white films?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's a great. The guy's hanging onto the tail or
Right,
whatever, and
yeah.
someone's standing on the wing. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Not the Flying Wallendas.
No, these guys
I see.
these were circus. These are circus performers, tightrope walkers, trapeze stuff, all high wire acts and things like
Right.
that. She was in her 90s, and again, someone doesn't come in. Oh, my dog has a cough, and I'm a Flying Wallenda. That doesn't happen.
Right.
It's like, oh, great.
Yeah.
The next day, she comes walking back to the hospital. This lady's about, I don't know, she's like 5 foot tall. And she comes walking back to the hospital. She got this big scrapbook. And then she asked my name, for me. And I came up front and I went, oh, hi, give her a hug
Yeah.
or whatever. And I'm hugging people all the time, which I've discovered that is like, I'm going to, my attorney has now said, don't hug people. So,
Sure.
but I hug people all the time.
Right.
And she comes in with this scrapbook, and I said, well, of course I got time. And so we went into a room where we looked at it up front, and we were leafing through these pictures of her when she's like 15, and she's on a high wire, and she's doing, and she's just leafing through page after page. And then her mother, her father, her uncles, and all these, because it was a big family. If you ever look it up, they were a big thing way in the day before my day. But that's how we used to, when we were kids. If somebody did something crazy, when I was in, and whatever, even a teenager, if somebody would just do some kind of crazy stunt, and they would be like, "Hey, what are you, one of the Flying Wallendas?" And that meant something. Then now it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you insulting me? What are you? But it was page after page of these
Yeah.
things, and she just was wanting to share that, and I would have to think she maybe didn't have many people to share it with anymore. And I showed an interest, and she came and
Right.
and so she made I don't know if I made her day, but she made my day. Yeah, but it's just overall, there's so many layers and things to do. I remember that some people would say, why do you want to be a veterinarian? Oh, because I love animals. I'm going, well, that's it. Next, you're out of here. It's like, you love animals. If somebody put it once, if you love animals a whole lot, you may not even want to be a veterinarian, because sometimes you're doing things to them that's like, you kind of think, oh my God, am I doing this to this animal?
Yeah.
And they wake up, they're not comfortable, or you got to treat them when they're been hit by a car or shot and they're in agony, and you got to try to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's a mix of wanting to love science, love medicine, like working with animals, and then like people,
Yeah.
and want to do good for the pets, their animals, and to do good things for the people that brought them in.
Yeah.
I've done several physical exams on teddy bears that come in. A 5-year-old
awesome.
would come in, and they have their dog or whatever, and the little girl has a teddy bear, and she goes, and Dr. Atkinson could probably check, Mr. Teddy and see how he's doing. I went, absolutely. You put Teddy up here on the, and put the stethoscope on him. I'm listening, and checking him, make him turn his head and cough, the usuals.
Yeah.
And bring them back, and it puts a smile on their face, and they're just happy. It's
Yeah. I love that.
it's just
I love that.
it's just funny.
I don't want to keep you forever, but like, why did you get into veterinary medicine?
Oh, it's an easy one. I thought you'd never ask. I didn't think you'd ask me that question. Why did you ask me that?
I thought you'd never ask. He unrolls a scroll.
And the answer is so like when I was in I don't know, let's say 10th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, there was this I wasn't really thinking much about what I wanted to do long term. I had all these crazy ideas. But at one point, somebody, some friend of my parents, they were talking about. I think they raised animals. They raised, they're breeders, aka breeders, and they were talking to me about, veterinarian. You should be a veterinarian. You ought to be a veterinarian. Veterinarian. What am I going to do? Oh, that take care of the pets and all that stuff. Oh, that'd be great. You're dealing with little. Had I known,
Right.
And I went, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. So then I just kind of thought about it, and I kind of did a little bit of research on, veterinarian and what's involved in that. Oh, good grades. I went, oh, well, that probably eliminates me. But it was kind of in the back of my mind, and people would say, what veterinarian? I want to be a veterinarian. And so then it was in 11th grade. It was in 11th grade. I was a buddy of mine, one of my good buddies, and I were we were at a carnival. We were Boy Scouts. We were at a carnival, and to help out, we were signed to the pony rides. So they had these little ponies, and we would just people would pay their money. They'd get on the kids, would get on the pony, and we would walk the pony around, a few times, and then take it back. So it was like, I don't know, 6, 7-year-olds that would come up and we get on the pony. And then these two girls were kind of watching us from the side, that they were probably years younger than we were, but too big for a pony ride. But they got up and they bought tickets for the pony rides, and they wanted us to take them around on the ponies. So the pony's going, oh, get them off my back. But we walked them around, and then we're flirting, and they're flirting with us. And so she hung around, and then I got off pony duty. And I met up with her. We're walking around the school, just kind of, talking, and maybe even held her hand or something like that, which was really a move for me, because I was really it was a big move. And then we were talking about, stuff, and then I said, hey, what is it you want to do when you graduate? And she goes, I want to be a veterinarian. And I went, me too. And then it was like, oh, we're bonding. So it was 11th grade. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, trying to pick up on a girl, I'm a veterinarian. Me too. And so I had to hold on to that oh, geez, I just told her to be a veterinarian. And then she's telling her friend, oh, he wants to be a veterinarian just like I do. And then after a few weeks, I met her dad or something. He wants to be a veterinarian just like me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what I want. And I thought, well, I guess I'm committed. Wow. I guess that's it. So I went, well, I better figure out a little bit more about this veterinary stuff.
Maintain this elaborate ruse.
Made this ruse. It was a ruse. I mean, thank God she didn't say something like, I want to be a hitman. Me too. But we're bonding. So wow. That's what she said. And it was like, so it was something I kind of was in the back of my mind. It was like, maybe, I don't know what's involved in it. But as soon as she said that, me too, then it was like, there was the commitment. I'm in. I'm all in. I'm all in. And from that moment on, it was like trying to figure out.
What happened to that girl?
I think she's a hit. She became a hit woman.
She might be a hit.
I think she became a hit woman. But very successful, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, we went out for a few years, and that was it. But by that time, I'm already in college, and it's like I already kind of got this commitment. Then I'm telling people in college I'm going to be a veterinarian. And it's like, all right, I can't get out of this now. I am in. So that's amazing. And I'm kind of goal oriented. And so when I said that and I committed to it, and I went, that's what I got to do. Right. So I just tried to improve my grades and then improve them through school. And then I still didn't get in because they weren't that great. And then I did grad work to improve my grades. And then I worked for a veterinarian for a year. And then I finally got in. And And some people might go, oh, I'm in now what do I want to do? But it's like, no, I got in, I got my goal. It really was a dream. And but it started out as a whim,
Right.
But it went to a dream, and it was I don't look back on it. So
Yeah.
so kids out there, get out there and do those pony rides.
Work pony duty, and you too can find your dream. Are you at a crossroads?
How do I become a veterinarian? Let me tell you how you Let me tell you how to be a veterinarian, son.
Well, thank you for that. That is I have been wanting to get you on some sort of radio type show for a long time. So I had to I created this whole podcast just so I could talk to you.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. To find out about pony rides, flying Wallendas, I mean, you got it all.
I got a lot of gold here.
Yeah, see? Yeah. Hey, Clint, what do you think? Yeah, sounds good.
This has been a fantastic experience, and I'm glad that I was doing it with you.
Oh, man, I wish I was on stage doing stuff with you. It was so much
I know.
fun. You were
miss
there
it.
when I was just kind of learning. And like I said, I didn't know anything about it. And
Yeah.
I went to Strasbourg for
Right.
for a year, and then this. And it's like, this doesn't seem like Strasbourg. Line, please. Line, please. No, there is no line. There is no line. You got to make it up.
It's in your brain. Yeah. What was it? Kathy Doyle Park or something? It was in Pacific Beach, and we would go and run through some games. I'm like, oh yeah, this is how we do Dr. Know-It-All or scene work or whatever.
You and me when we do this? You mean or what?
Yeah, you and me. You don't remember this?
Yeah, I remember that at the
okay.
dance studio.
Oh, we did it there too. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, see,
just wherever we could go and get some time. Well, whenever we'd go
Anywhere.
and get some time.
Basically.
Sit there, stare at each other. You and your chaps and
Yeah, that was... and my pony. And I gotta get on my pony and get home.
I don't make any decisions without a pony.
Yeah. I've had this pony since I was 17.
All my favorite life decisions I've made with good old Pony Cottontail over here.
Oh, don't worry, baby. You get extra oats tonight. Just trust me. Trust me.
Well, thank you for doing this. I absolutely appreciate it. It's been a huge pleasure having you on. I'm so happy that you were here and joining me. Thank you.
Ditto. It's just fun talking to you. Always had fun, doing improv with you and just visiting with you and whatever it was we were doing.
Yeah.
Even if we were having, did a show together and we had sandwiches at whatever that deli was till 4:00 in the morning. That was all fun.
Yeah, Brian's. I think it. Brian's
Yeah, that's
is
what it was.
called.
Yeah. I don't know if I can stay up till 4:00 in the morning anymore. That'd be a toughie.
Oh, me neither. Yeah, it's 8 p.m. my time, and I'm like, I gotta take my sleepy cap. Gotta put my sleeping cap on. Where's my candle? Is my robe nearby?
Funny.
All right. Well, thank you again.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. See yous.
And there you have it, my conversation with Al Atkinson. Man, I love that guy. It's amazing how influential he has been in my life without me really realizing it until this moment. Like I said, I didn't go into vet med or veterinary medicine because of him. We traded improv for medical care. That's it. That was the extent of it. But because he was actually the inspiration for my then girlfriend, then eventually wife, and then now ex-wife, for her to go into veterinary medicine, and then I sort of followed her. And we of course then he actually coded her at graduation. So he was that linked there, and then I was sort of an outsider, just kind of looking in during all of that. But he's been around, right? I mean, and as I move forward and things, he checks in, and as I learn about stuff, he gets really excited about those things. I sent him my personal statement, actually. I just remembered for him to edit. So he's been around through all of this, and I just love his perspective on things, and I think that maybe I'm in whatever way possible emulating that connection in the room with the people as my style of medicine. I try to do the best medicine I can. I try to stay up as best as possible. But at the end of the day, it's really about connecting to this person. But I do think that connection piece is important. And that's something that I tell people all the time. I mean, the perception of the medicine has a lot to do with the relationship. It has a lot to do with your connection and them feeling heard, them feeling like their presenting complaint is actually addressed more than anything else. And to come up with a treatment plan together, I think is important. And I think a lot of that comes from Al. So maybe not directly. Maybe we are just drawn to the same things and are kind of old friends because we have similar sensibilities in that way. I don't know. He did, you do see a little bit of his old manism because he's like the kids these days. Now, he's very diplomatic. He's like, some people don't like to work as much as they once did. And I, as a millennial, I am of that generation, right, where people started saying that. And so I have that immediate trigger where I'm like, work-life balance is important. And you crazy people, I spent my life looking at it's like my mom is working and working and working. And, just the hopes that she'll retire and then do the thing that she loves. And I think that we as a generation saw that and are trying to go the other way. So of course I have that kind of natural resistance. But gosh, man, I kind of agree with him. I don't want to, I don't want to. I think he has a point. And also he's, saying it from that perspective. It's like he understands the balance and he understands that maybe his generation went, too far the other way. And his point was basically at the beginning not for the company, which I think is how we normally hear it. It's not do more work for the company that you work for, put your reps in to so that you can climb that ladder. That wasn't his point at all. His point was when you come out of school, you don't really know that much. And so early in your career, when you still have a little bit of verve, spend a couple more hours. Like, don't shy away from work because that's when you're learning. And you set yourself up early so that later on you can kind of, wean yourself down. And I mean, truthfully, that's how I've approached my career, right? I mean, not my first year out. My first year out was a job, but I was also doing a fellowship, a teaching fellowship. So it's like I was working a ton there, and then I had to establish my business, and then doing that, I worked a ton. And then now I'm allowing myself to kind of back away from that. So it's like, at first I'm like, no, work-life balance is important. We should respect our time and all that stuff, which I do think is true. But at the same time, I think that, if you're approaching it from I'm only going to, I'm not going to put more work on, up front, you're making a decision. Like, you're making that point of, I'm going to live this exact career. I'm going to live this exact life for like a while. Putting in extra work gives you extra things, or at least that should be what it is. I don't believe that you should be doing that for a company that is not necessarily rewarding you for it. You're kind of doing it for yourself, right? You're putting in those extra hours for you and the value that it brings you. And if you don't find it valuable, well, then great, don't do it. But to be on the face, just resistant to doing more because you're early in your career and it's a ridiculous expectation, like I used to be, then maybe we reconsider that a little bit. Maybe there's some middle ground between coming out and being like, give me everything. I'm going to work 36 hours a week and that's it. 36 and a half, I'm leaving. And this sort of, I'm going to be here all day, every day until one day I die. There's a middle ground, right? There's like a middle ground of like, I don't know everything, so I'm going to put a little bit more work in so that I can know things and then I can back away later. I don't know, but find what that is for you. Don't let other people guilt you into it, because that's how I think how companies have tended to do it in the past. You're not a team player, and if you were really part of the company, then you would sacrifice more of your time and blah blah blah. I think that's garbage. However, I also think that there's a slippery slope, right? I think that if you keep doing it and doing it, that when, working and working and working, when do you back yourself away? And you could very easily spend several years of your life and sacrifice family time and sacrifice your friends so that you can be at work all the time. So it's about finding that balance, and that's a tough dynamic thing that that I'm still working on for sure. But old man Withers over here, old man Atkinson, he has a point. Old man Atkinson, by the way, he definitely owns a rocking chair. It's a rocking chair, that has that straw woven in the back, and that's what your support is. And the bottoms are just they're a little bit rough on the sides, but very smooth on the bottom, like it's been used quite a while. And he's like, Old man Atkinson. Old man Atkinson waits for the orange truck to pass by. And the orange truck comes on by, and he's like, I'll take an orange. And that's his daily vitamin C intake, which he focuses on because his parents had scurvy. That's how old man Atkinson is. So, old man Atkinson has a point. He has more of a point than he does teeth. That's all I'm saying. So thank you again for listening, and if you have, just thank you for sharing and posting it to social media pages and all the stuff that you're doing that is helping continue the life of this thing. I very much appreciate it. So until next week, may the chuckles of Dr. Atkinson resonate throughout your soul and bring you just a little bit of joy, like it did me. So thank you again. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.